The alarm screamed through every corridor of Kepler Player Station. Red lights flashed against the metal walls as people ran in every direction. Commander K.T. Morrison stood at the center of the command room watching her. Screens filled with enemy ships. There were too many of them, far too many. How many? She asked, her voice calm even as her heart raced. 47 were ships, Commander. Officer replied. His hands shook as he worked to the controls. They came out of nowhere, no warning. Nothing. Katie had served in the Terran Defense Force for 20 years. But she had never seen anything like this. The Vortani Dominion had arrived, and they had come with enough firepower to destroy a planet. The Vortani were conquerors. Everyone in the galaxy knew this. They had crushed dozens of species under their rule over thousands of years. Their empire stretched across hundreds of star systems, and now, for reasons Katie did not understand, they had decided that humanity was next. All horns to battle stations, Katie ordered. Launch every fighter we have. Get the civilians to the escape pods. She knew it would not be enough. Kepler Station was a mining outpost, not a military base. They had a small defense force, few patrol ships, and walls that were never built to withstand this kind of attack. But K.T. Morrison was not the kind of woman who gave up without a fight. The battle lasted for hours. It felt like 4 days. Terran fighters flew out to meet the enemy. They were fast and skilled, but the Vortani outnumbered them 20-1. One by one, the small human ships disappeared from Katie's screens. Each vanishing dot was a pillow she knew by name. Each one was someone's son or daughter, husband or wife. The station's guns fired until they overheated. Engineers worked through smoke and fire to keep systems running. Medics dragged wounded soldiers through hallways filled with broken metal and shattered glass. Everyone fought, everyone did their part, but it was not enough. The Vortani broke through the outer defense after 2 hours. Their boarding pods slammed into the station's hull like metal fists. Alien soldier pulled through the brides, tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. They carried weapons that fired beams of burning light. They moved with a confidence of hunters who had never known defeat. Katie watched from the common room as her people fell back, section by section. She ordered every door sealed. She ordered every trap sprung. She made the Vortani pay for every meter they took, but they kept coming. There were always more of them. In a storage room on level 7, a young engineer named Danny colleague behind a pile of supply crates. He was 23 years old. He had come to Kepler Station 6 months ago to work on the mining equipment. He had never feared a weapon in his life. Now he listened to the sounds of battle growing closer and tried not to shake. Danny had managed to keep a small communication Z working. It was hidden in a maintenance shaft, connected to an old antenna that nobody used anymore. While the main systems failed one by one, Danny's little setup kept sending signals into the darkness of space. He had sent the distress call 3 hours ago. He did not know if anyone had heard it. He did not know if anyone was coming. All he could do was wait and hope and try to stay alive. Through a crack in the storage room door, Danny watched Vortani soldier Marim prisoner down the corridor. The aliens pushed and kicked the captured humans, laughing in their strange clicking language. They did not see their prisoners as People, they saw them as things, as property. Then he felt sick, he felt hungry, but most of all he felt helpless. On the command deck, Casey Morrison made her final stand. She had a pistol in each hand and 7 officers at her side. The Vortani had breached the last door. There was nowhere left to run. It has been an honor, she said to her people. They not dead, they raised their weapons. They did not beg, they did not cry. They were Terran, and Terrans did not surrender. The door exploded inward. KT fired until pistols were empty. High above the Ding station, Overlord Zetkar watched from his flagship with satisfaction. He was the commander of this invasion force, one of the highest-ranking officers in the Vortani Dominion. He had conquered the 11 species in Islam career. Humanity would be the 12th. He opened a channel to broadcast across all human frequencies. His translators converted his words into the crude human language. Humans of this system, Zetkar announced, your station has fallen, your defenders are dead or captured, resistance is pointless. The Vortani Dominion claims this territory and all humans within it. You will serve us now. Those who obey will leave, those who resist will suffer. He posed, enjoying the moment. We have studied your species. We know what you are. You are weak, you are soft, you fight among yourselves like animals. You have no unity, no strength, no purpose. You are not worthy of the stars, but we are merciful. Submit to us, and we will give your pathetic species place in our hamper, refuse, and we will erase you from existence. Zetkar ended the transmission with a smile. He had given this speech many times before. The response was always the same: fear, panic, surrender. Boot far away on a blue planet called Earth, someone was listening. Admiral Grace Soloway sat in her office at Terran Command headquarters. She was 62 years old with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. She listened to Zetkar's message in silence. She watched the footage from Kepler station. She saw her people die. When the message ended, Grace stood up. She walked to her window and looked out at the city below. Millions of humans lived their lives down there, unaware of what had just happened on the edge of their territory. Unaware of what was coming, Grace picked up her communicator. This is Admiral, she said. Authorization code 77 Alpha 9. I am activating the submarine expeditionary force, full combat deployment. Tell Sergeant Major Hawkins that his people ship out in 6 hours. She posed erudite with cold fury, and tell him to pack for a long trip. We have some aliens to educate across the planet in basin, beneath mountains and buried under oceans. 2,000 of humanity's deadliest warriors received the call. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. They had hoped it would never come, but now that it had, they would answer. The Vortani thought they knew what humans were. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In a dark room aboard the Vortani flagship, intelligence officer Kestrel studied the human species. He had been doing this for 3 years, ever since the Dominion first discovered these strange creatures from the small blue planet. His job was to understand enemies before the Dominion crushed to them. He was very good at his job, or so he believed. Kettle pulled up Phil on his display screen. A mag filled the room. Cities, farms, oceans. The planet was beautiful, he had to admit, but beauty meant Nothing, only strength mattered, human. He muttered to himself, reading his notes. Salud. Young species. Achieved faster than light travel only. 80 years ago, small territory. Forward than 50 colony words, military. Force are minimal compared to dominion. Standard, he scrolled through more data. Human history, human wars, human art and science and culture, the Dominion had intercepted human broadcast for decades. They knew everything about these creatures, internal conflicts throughout their history. Kettle continued, they fight among themselves constantly, world wars, civil wars, religious wars, they cannot even unite their own species. They are fractured, weak, chaotic, he nodded with satisfaction. The assessment was clear, humans were no threat to the Dominion. They had built their civilization on trade and diplomacy rather than conquest. They made friends instead of slaves. They talked when they should have fought. In the Vortani view, this made them pathetic. Kettle sent his final report to Overlord Zetskar. The conclusion was simple: humanity would fall within weeks. Their colonies would surrender. One by one, their home world would beg for mercy. Another species would join the long list of Dominion subjects. He did not know how wrong he was. Kettle had studied human wars. He had seen the numbers, millions dead in their world. Wars, cities destroyed, nations burned, but he had made a critical mistake. He saw these wars as evidence of human weakness. He thought a species that fought itself so much must be easy to defeat. He never considered another possibility. He never asked himself what kind of species could survive such destruction and keep going. He never wondered what humans had learned from all that death. He never imagined that humanity's history of war had created something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that knew how to fight, really fight in ways the Vortani could not imagine. Thousands of flight years away, the assault carrier, relentless, moved through sleep space toward Kepler Station. The ship was enormous, a mountain of metal and weapons carrying 2,000 Terran Marines. These were not ordinary soldiers. These were the SEP Marine Expeditionary Force, the most decorated and feared unit in human history. In the main briefing room, Sergeant Major Petrain stood before his platoon. He was 51 years old with a shaved head and scars on his face that told stories he never talked about. He had fought in the Mars insurrection 20 years ago. He had seen things that still visited him in nightmare, but he had kept fighting because that was what Marines did. Listen up, Pete said, his voice rough like gravel. You all know why we are here. The Vortani eat Kepler Station. They killed our people. They think they can take what they want and we will just accept it. He paused, looking at each Marine in turn. They are wronged. Marines sat in perfect silence. They wore their combat armor, gray and black, built to enhance their strength and speed. Each suite was covered in equipment, weapons, grenades, medical supplies, everything a human needed to survive in hell. Corporal Nikra sat in the front row. He was 28, quiet with dark eyes that never seemed to blink. Nick was a sniper, the best in the entire force. He could eat a target from 3 kilometers away in total darkness. He rarely spoke, but when he pulled the trigger, people listened. Bossedham sat. Private First Class Megan Torres. She was 25, small but fierce with short brown hair and steady hands. Megan was a Comba medic, her job was to keep Marines alive when everything around them was trying to kill them. She was very good at her job. She had joined the Marines 2 years ago after a Vortani raiding party destroyed a civilian transport ship her mother and brother were on. That ship, there were no survivors. Megan did not talk about revenge. She talked about duty, but everyone knew the truth. Intel says there are 30,000 Vortani soldiers at Kepler Station. Pete continued. We have 2,000 Marines. That means each of you needs to handle 15 of them. A few Marines laughed, not because it was funny, because they had done worse before. The Vortani think they know us. Pete said they have studied our history. They have watched our broadcasts. They think they understand what humans are, but they only see what we show the galaxy. The peaceful side, the diplomatic side. The side that shakes hands and signs treaty. He smiled. But there was no warmth in it. They have never seen the other side, the side that crawled through mud and blood for 10,000 years. The side that survived Ice Age and plagues and nuclear weapons. The side that keeps fighting when any sane species would give up. Pete picked up his rifle from the table. It was an old weapon, scratched and worn from years of use. He had carried it through a dozen battles. It had never failed him. Vortani call themselves Conqueror. They have crushed species across the galaxy. They think they are the greatest warriors in existence, but they have never faced anything like us. They have never fought a species that knows what real war looks like. He looked at his Marines with pride. We are going to teach them, and by the time we are done, they will understand some things that every enemy of humanity learns. Eventually, you can push us, you can hurt us, you can make us bleed, but you cannot break us, and if you try, we will make you regret it for the rest of your very short lives. The Marines did not cheer. They did not need to. Their silence said everything. In her quarter, Megan Torres looked at a photograph. It showed their mother and brother smiling at the camera. They had been going to visit family on another colony. A simpler trip, a happy occasion. Then the Vortani came. Megan put the photograph away and checked her medical kit for the 100th time. Bondage, painkillers, surgical tools, everything she needed to save lives, and on a hip a pistol. For when saving lives was not enough, the Relentless flew on through the darkness between Star, carrying its cargo of warriors toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. The Vortani waited at Kepler Station, confident, their strength certain of their victory. They had no idea what was coming. The Terran fleet arrived in the Kepler system like ghosts. They came through slip space behind an asteroid field, using the rocks to hide their ships from Vorton sensors. Admiral Grace Holloway had studied 1,000 years of human military history. She knew that the best victories came from surprise, launched the decoys she ordered from her common ship. Small drones flew from the fleet, each one broadcasting signals that made it look like a full warship. To the Vortani sensor, it seemed like the Terran attack was coming from the wrong direction. The alien fleet moved to intercept the false threat. That was when the real attack began. Drop pods fell from the Relentless like metal rain. Each pod carried for Marines packed tight inside armor, the shells that could survive entry through any atmosphere. The pod them for the moon, where the Vortani had built as their command center. By the time the aliens realized their mistake, 2,000 Marines were already falling from the sky. Surge. Major Peto felt the pod shake around him as it burned through the thin atmosphere. The heat was intense even through his armor. Warning lights flashed, alarms screamed. But Pete had done this 100 times before. He kept his breathing steady and his mind calm. 30 seconds to impact. Pod's computer announced. Pete checked his rifle one more time. Busy dim. 3 Marines from his squad did the same. Their face showed no fear, only focus. 10 seconds. The retro rockets fired, slowing the pod just enough to survive. The landing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The pod hits the ground hard. The doors blew open. Pete was out before the dust settled, his rifle already scanning for targets. All around him, other pods were landing. Marines pulled out onto the rocky surface of the moon, forming into their units with practice speed. They moved toward the Vortani base without hesitation. The aliens saw them coming. Of course they did. There was no hiding. 2,000 soldier landing at your front door. The Vortani command at the base. A general named Var watched the human forces approach and felt nothing but amusement. So few, he said to his officers. They send 2,000 against our 30,000. These humans are even more stupid than we thought. 8, said he. Ordered his force to advance. Thousands of Vortani soldiers marched out to meet the human attack. They had superior number, superior position, and superior firepower. Victory was certain. Then the smoke came. Every Marine carried special grenade. When they exploded, they released thick clouds of gray smoke that blocked all light. Within seconds, the battlefield was covered in fog so dense that you could not see your hand in front of your face. The Vortani stopped. They were hunters by nature, evolved on a bright world with 2 suns. Their eyes were made for light. In darkness they were nearly blind. Their technology had never needed to adapt to fighting conditions like this. Human technology had adapted a long time ago. Inside his helmet, Pitakin saw the world in perfect clarity. Thermal imaging showed him every source within 500 m. Every Vortani soldier glowed bright orange against the cold background. They stumbled through the smoke, firing their weapons at shadows, hitting nothing. The Marines did not stumble. They moved through the smoke like walls through a forest. Their neural-linked targeting systems calculated every shot before they pulled the trigger. Their armor-enhanced muscle let them run faster, jump higher, eat harder than any normal human. Corporal Nikraz found a position on a rocky ridge overlooking the Vortani artillery battery. Through his scope he could see the alien gunners trying to figure out what was happening. They had no idea that death was washing them from the fog. Nick fired. One Vanny fell. He fired again. Another fell. He kept firing. Smooth and steady, never missing. By the time the aliens realized they were under attack, half of them were already dead. And GT, the rest tried to run. They did not get far. In the trench, Vortani soldier heard sounds they did not understand. Footsteps in the smoke, whispered words in human language, then gunfire close and brutal, followed by screams that cut off suddenly. A young Vortani soldier named Key pressed his back against the trench wall. His weapon shook in his forehead. He had been so confident this morning the humans were weak. Everyone knew this. The Dominion would crush them. Easily, now Kay was not sure about anything. Something moved in the smoke. To his left, he fired blindly, the beam of his weapon cutting through the fog. Nothing, then movement to his right. He spun and fired again, still nothing. Around grabbed his uncle. Kay looked down and saw a human marine rising from the ground. The human had been lying flat, invisible in the smoke, waiting for the perfect moment. Now that moment had come. The marine did not shoot Keth. That would have made noise, given away his position. Instead, he simply pulled Keith Fellard, his weapon flying from his grip. Before he could scream, a knife found his throat. Silence returned to the trench. Across the battlefield, similar scene played out again and again. The Vortani had numbers, the humans had training, technology, and 10,000 years of learning how to kill in the dark. General Var watched his force fall apart, his communications filled with screaming voice, officer begging for reinforcement, soldiers reporting enemies that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as fast. They are ghost, one commander shouted before his senior went dead. They will not die, another cried. We shoot them and they keep coming. Var did not understand. How could this be happening? The humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to break at the first sign of real opposition, but this creature, these Marines, they did not break. They did not slow down. They did not stop. They were something the Vortani had never encountered before. They were human soldiers doing what human soldiers had always done, fighting with everything they had against any odds for as long as it took. Private Megan Torres moved through the smoke, Rifle and her medical kit in the other. She found wounded Marines and patched them up, sometimes while bullets flew overhead. She found wounded Vortani too. She did not help them. She was a healer, but she was not a saint. By the time the smoke finally cleared 4 hours later, the battlefield was covered in bodies. Most of them were Vortani. General Var looked at his displays with disbelief. He had lost 8,000 soldiers. The humans had lost fewer than 200. The numbers made no sense. Nothing made sense anymore. For the first time in his long career, Var considered a word that Vortani generals never used: retreat. Overlord Zekar stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his umpire's finest soldier flee from a species he had called weak. The reports coming from the surface made no sense. 8 frozen dead. In 4 hours, 8/10 of the Dominion's warrior killed by creatures who should have been easy prey. Something had gone terribly wrong. Order the fleet to begin orbital bombardment, Zetkar commanded. His voice was steady, but inside he felt something he had not felt in century. Fear. Overlord, his officer replied. 1. Force are still on the surface. An orbital strike would kill them too. I know what it would do. Follow my orders. The Vortiser hesitated. Sacrificing your own soldiers was against every tradition of the Dominion. But Zetkar was the overlord. His word was low. The officer turned to carry out the command. Before the fleet could fire, new contacts appear on their sensor. The Terran destroyer Ironclad come out of sleep space directly in front of the Vortani flagship. It was followed by 3 more warships, all of them smaller than the alien vessels, but faster and more maneuverable. Captain Ben Porter stood at the helm, a thin smile on his face. Open fire, you said calmly. Man. Missiles strict through space. They were smart weapons designed by engineers who had spent decades learning from humanity's endless wars. The missile dodged defensive fire, split into smaller warheads, and struck their targets with terrible precision. Zetter's flagship shuddered as explosion ripped through its outer hull. Alarm screamed. Crew members ran in every direction. The Overlord grabbed his command chair to keep from falling. Return fire, destroy those ships. The Vortani fleet was larger, stronger, and more numerous, but they were spread out, positioned for a ground assault, not a space battle. The Terran ships were concentrated, working together, covering each other's weakness. It was a dance that human navies had perfected over centuries of fighting among themselves. While the battle read in orbit, the Marines on the surface continued their advance. The Vortani fell back to their final position, a fortified bunker complex built into the side of a mountain. General Var had gathered his remaining force there, along with something that might save them: human prisoner. More than 300 civilians captured during the attack on Kepler Station, men, women, and children held in cells deep within the bunker. Var opened a communication channel to the advancing human force. "Human soldier," he said, his translated voice echoing across the battlefield. "We have your people. 300 of them. If you continue your attack, we will kill them all. Stop your advance immediately and withdraw. This is not a request." The Marines stopped, not because they were afraid, but because they needed to think. Sergeant Major Petkins knelt behind the rock, considering his option. The Vortani had a stage that changed everything, or did it? Pete opened his own communication channel. "Vortani command. This is Sergeant Major of the Terran Marines. We hear your message. We are sending someone to talk." He turned to look at the soldiers around him. His eyes found Megan Torres. "Torres, you are up." Megan nodded. She understood what was needed. She removed a rifle and handed it to another Marine. She kept only her medical kit and a small pistol hidden in her boot. Then she picked up a white flag from their supplies and walked out into the open. The Vortani watched her approach with confusion. A single human carrying a flag of surrender, walking slowly toward their lines. What was this supposed to mean? Were they humans giving up after all? General Var ordered his soldiers to let her pass. He was curious. Perhaps these creatures had finally learned their place. Megan walked through no man's land, past the bodies of fallen Vortani and the burned wreckage of their equipment. She kept her eyes forward, her steps steady. Inside, her heart was pounding, but she did not let it show. She stopped 50 m from the bunker entrance. A group of Vortani officers came out to meet her, their weapons ready. General Var was among them, his forearms crossed over his armored chest. "You come to surrender?" Var asked through his translator. Megan shook her head. "No, I come to offer you a chance." The general laughed. The sound was harsh and clicking, wrong to human ears. "You offer us a chance. We have 30,000 soldiers. We have your people in cash. What could you possibly offer us?" Megan looked at him with calm. "Your lives." The laughter stopped. "Release the prisoners." Megan continued. "Lay down your weapons. Walk away. If you do this, you will survive. If you do not, you will die. All of you, every single one." Verator, this tiny creature, this soft human female, was threatening him, threatening the Vortani dominion. The idea was absurd. "You are insane," he said. "You have fewer than 2,000 soldiers left. We outnumber you 15 to 1. We have fortified positions, heavy weapons, and hostage you cannot rescue without killing them yourselves. You have nothing. Megan smiled. It was a sad smile, the kind that comes from knowing something terrible. You still do not understand, she said. You have studied our history. You know that we fight among ourselves. You think this makes us weak, but you never ask the right question, she posed, letting the silence grow heavy. You never ask what we learned from all that fighting. You never wondered why we survived when other species would have destroyed themselves. You think we choose peace because we are soft. We choose peace because we know what happens when we choose war. She turned and began walking back toward her own lines. You cannot just leave. You have not negotiated anything. Megan stopped. Boot did not turn around. There is nothing to negotiate. I gave you the choice. You made your decision. Now you will see what happens next, she continued. Walking, the Vortani officers watched her go, uncertain for the first time. Var tried to think of something to say, some way to regain control of the situation. Before he could speak, the smoke began to rise again, not from granite this time, from smoke generators carried by Marines who had crawled through the darkness to surround the entire bunker complex. The gray fog rolled in from every direction, swallowing the battlefield in sick silence, and then, from somewhere in that sense, came the sound of boots, hundreds of boots, thousands of boots moving through the smoke like a heartbeat. The Vortani had demanded the humans beg for mercy. Now they would learn what begging really meant. The bunker shook as explosion ripped through its outer walls, shaped a charge designed by human engineers who had spent generations perfecting the art of breaking through fortifications, tore open doors that were supposed to be unbreakable. The Marines did not wait for the dust to settle. They poured through the bridges like water through cracks in a dam. General Var screamed or into his communicator, but nobody was listening anymore. His soldiers were fighting for their lives in every corridor, every room, every corner of the complex. The smoke made it impossible to see. Noise made it impossible to think. And the humans, those soft, weak humans, were everywhere at once. Sergeant Major Pekin led his squad through the main entrance. His rifle never stopped moving, tracking from target to target with smooth precision. Behind him, his Marines spread out information, covering each other, advancing together. A Vortani soldier appeared from a doorway, weapon raised. Pete shot him before the alien could pull the trigger. Another came around the corner. Pete shot him too. There was no in Pete's face, no joy, just focus. Just the job. Aston level 3, Pete said into his communicator. Everyone else keep pushing, Corporal. Nikraz had already reached level 3. He moved through the smoke like a shadow, his pistol replacing his sniper rifle. In the close quarters, 2 guards stood outside the cell block where the human prisoners were held. Nick killed them both with quick shots before they even knew he was there. He opened the door. 300 face looked up at him. Men and women and children, dirty and scared, crammed into cells meant for half their number. They had heard the battle raging above them. They had feared the worst. Now they saw a human face looking back at them. Terra Marines. Nick said simply, "We are here to take you home. We are here to take you home." A woman in the Francel started crying, others joined. There some laughed, some prayed. Young boy pushed his face against the bars and whispered, "I knew you would. Come, I knew it," Nick broke the locks and opened the cells. Other Marines arrived to help escort the prisoners to safety. As they passed Nick, many of them reached out to touch him, as if they needed to make sure he was real. He was real. They all were. In another part of the bunker, Private Megan Torres worked on a wounded Marine. The soldier had taken a beam hit to the leg, burning through his armor and into the flesh below. Megan injected painkillers and wrapped the wound with steady hands. "You are going to be thin," she told him. "Just a scratch," the Marine laughed through gritted teeth. "Funny, this scratch really hurts. All the best the stories do." She finished the bondage and helped him stand. Another Marine came to support him, and they moved toward the extraction point. Megan turned back towards the fighting. There would be more wounded. There always were. General Var made his last stand in the command center. He had gathered 50 of his best soldiers around him, the survivors of a force that had numbered 30,000 just hours before. They pointed their weapons at every door, every window, waiting for the humans to come. The smoke poured in. First, then the grenades, then the Marines. The fight lasted 3 minutes. When it ended, Var was the only Vort still alive in the room. He lay on the floor, bleeding from wounds in all 4 arms, watching human boots walk toward him. Petkins looked down at the fallen general. "Your overlord," Pete said. "Where is he?" Var kushed up blood that was the wrong color for human eyes. In orbit watching, he saw everything. Pete nodded. "Good, he was supposed to." In space, Overlord Zetker did watch. He watched his ground force destroyed. He watched his fleet battered by Terran ships. He watched everything he had believed about humans proven completely wrong. His flagship was dying around him. The human weapons had crippled his engines and turned holes in his Alfie's crew was dead. The other Alf was trying to save what remained of the ship. "Overlord is communication officer said. The human fleet is ailing us. They want to talk." Zetgar closed his 4 eyes. Talk? After all this, they wanted to talk. He had expected them to simply finish him off. Perhaps that would have been kinder. Put them through. Admiral Grace all the way appeared on his screen. She looked tired. She looked old, but her eyes were sharp and clear, and there was something in them that made Zetgar want to look away. "This is Admiral of the Terran Defense Force. Your ground force have surrendered. Your fleet is crippled. Your evasion has failed. I am offering you the chance to withdraw your remaining ships and return to Dominion space. In exchange, you will release all human prisoners, abandon all claims to human territory, and tell your government what happened here today." Zetgar stared at her. "You are letting us go after everything. I am giving you a message to deliver." Grace leaned forward, and the camera caught every line in her face, every year of war and loss and fighting that had brought her to this moment. "You came to our home. You killed our people. You thought we were weak because we chose peace, but we choose peace because we know what we become. When we choose war, we become something your Dominion has never faced. We become the monsters that hunt in the dark, soldiers who never stop, the species that survived everything the universe threw at us and kept going." She posed to let the world sink in. "Go home, Overlord. Tell your people what you saw. Tell them that humanity is not prey. Tell them that if they ever return to our space, we will not offer mercy. Second time, the transmission ended. Zetkar sat in for a long. 3 days later, Sergeant Major Pet Hawkins stood on the rebuilt observation deck of Kepler Station. The bodies had been removed, the fires had been put out, life was slowly returning to normal. He held a photograph in his hands. A young woman smiled at the camera, dark hair blowing in a wind that existed only in memory, his daughter. She had been visiting Kepler Station. When the Versani attacked, she had not made it to the escape pods. Pete had not told anyone. He had not asked for special treatment or time off. He had done his job, led these Marines and saved 300 people. Now finally he allowed himself to mourn. He placed the photograph against the base of a new memorial being built in the station's main plaza. Thousands of other photographs and flowers and handwritten notes surrounded it. So many lives lost. So many stories ended. The inscription at the top of the memorial was simple. They asked the universe for peace. When denied, they told the universe why. Pete saluted the memorial and walked away. There would be of battles, other enemies, other wars, but for today the job was done. Humanity had sent its message. The galaxy would